This ship chat was voted on by my members. If you want to support the channel, then consider becoming a member. Alternatively, if you want to just give a one-off support or thanks for the work I do, then you can give via the new Super Thanks feature. It's in the bottom corner of the video somewhere that says thanks with a heart on it, and that's basically the equivalent of a super chat like on a live stream, but on my video and in my video comment section. So it will be there displayed and highlighted, and you can say how much you liked your video, or you've had a particularly pressing question, anything like that, to thank you for your support. So consider giving via the Super Thanks. Thank you very much. Right, today we're going to be looking at the Winged Defender. That's how I'm going to say it. You'll just have to accept that. This is, of course, part of my Romulan month as we work up to the return of Wings of Romulus. So let's get into it. So it was created by FASA for the game. Now it's interesting because, from what I can tell, FASA comes out around about the time of Star Trek 3, which I believe still predates the Next Generation by a couple years or so. Really what this means is that they were designing this Romulan ship without really knowing what a Romulan ship looked like. You basically had the bird of prey from Balance of Terror, and that was about it. You did have the Klingon bird of prey from Search for Spock, and I know that the Romulans are suggested to have been the villains at one point, and perhaps, yes, this was perhaps what they were thinking, or was perhaps, I don't know, one of the concept pieces for the film. I'm talking very early in concept, because the Burrell bird of prey is very clearly Klingon. I think, they said bird of prey early in the script, but then actually once they started getting towards building a model, by that point they had decided the villains would be Klingons. Because, look at the Burrell, and then look at the Winged Defender. Yes, there's a shared DNA there, but there's also a lot of differences. So, as I say, it's taken inspiration from the bird of prey, but it is very much its own design. It's been in various video games over the years. It's been in Star Trek Conquest, Star Trek Legacy, numerous mods, of course, including Armada 3, I believe Ages of the Federation. There are more. I couldn't possibly name them all. It's prolific. It is perhaps one of the most prolific, if not the most prolific, beta canon Romulan ship. Indeed, it's so prolific it was resurrected by resurrected starships. He did a new model that he created, and it's a fantastic looking model, and very garish and very bold design, which I kind of like. But he really keeps to the core features of the design, which is, I think, the most interesting part of that. And I think it speaks fundamentally to FASA were just onto a bang on design. This was just a perfect sweet spot design. It was just perfect. Right, so now that we've covered its origins, we'll look at it in universe. So it was developed in the 2270s after the joint design program for the joint bird of prey fell through. Now, how that program fell through, that's a story for another time. Needless to say, Klingons took some technology, Romulans also took some technology from that exchange, and they both had very different ideas about how they wanted to use that technology, and the Romulans applied it in the Winged Defender. There was a previous bird of prey that had come out during the 70s called the White Wind, which would still remain the mainstay, but the Winged Defender was going to be their new next generation bird of prey. This was going to blow all the others out the water. Main bird of prey, their primary starship for the foreseeable future. Now, like I say, there were different goals. The Klingons wanted more of a scout and supporting ship. The Romulans wanted a hunter-killer, and that is what they got in the Winged Defender. We call it a bird of prey, and in fact all Romulan ships, at least small Romulan ships of this era, are called birds of prey, but there's in fact so many different classes at this point that there are two different subtypes. You have Sparivarius, which are the lighter, more defensively minded birds of prey, more short range, and the longer range Accipiters, which are larger, more powerful, and designed to go off on their own. Now, looking at the construction of the winged defender, what you really have is actually quite a light profile. Yes, it's substantially larger than something like the Wings of Vengeance, but actually compared to or even the Tallis refit, or its contemporary, the White Wind, the Winged Defender is actually not much in terms of hull mass. It's a very light design, and that's part of what gives it an advantage, tactically speaking. It's got 4 impulse engines and then a very, very sleek and light profile. It's surprisingly maneuverable for Romulan ships, and certainly it's a step above, well, the original Tallis, and that is something that they just continually improved since then. So the Winged Defender has 4, and this allows it incredible, particularly combined with its relatively low mass. It's got incredible agility, especially for a ship of this size, which is not insubstantial in the 23rd century. The main feature of the Winged Defender, and really what puts it above the White Wind, is of course the variable geometry wings. This is of course a brand new technology acquired from the Klingons. In the kind of normal mode in which we see it, that's the attack mode with the wings upright, and that creates a warp field which is at a very high angle, and the ship sits very low in the warp pocket, and basically what that gives it is incredible speed. It's not efficient, and it's not particularly maneuverable at warp, but it does afford you a lot of warp speed when you lean into that lower part of the warp bubble. Alternatively, for longer range travel, it will use the cruise mode, where the wings are basically flat or just below, where the engines are just below the line of the hull. And that minimizes your warp field profile, so it's good for stealth. And it also enables you to cruise much more efficiently. And this is important because this is a relatively small ship running on an antimatter reactor, and Romulan antimatter reactors are not the most fuel efficient. So you need to be very careful about when you actually go to attack mode. It's not like the Klingons, who have a pretty good solid engine that doesn't guzzle fuel like mad, and they can keep their barrels in either configuration. It really has no, I won't say it has no effect on the barrel, but it has limited effect on the barrel. But because the engine nacelles are on the end of the wings, it makes a big difference. So the ability for the Winged Defender to just suddenly, like that, switch up its nacelle geometry and sort of disappear into a cruise or fly off towards the target is impressive. It is impressively fast. It's still not quite as quick as the Klingon or Federation contemporaries of its day, but it's pretty close. And again, it's a significant improvement over previous generations of Romulan ships that had very low warp power and that couldn't use warp speed while using the cloaking device either. So there's a very significant advancement in that respect. Now, of course, when it gets to its target, it's got its weapons to deploy. Now, it's worth saying here that in the actual FASA materials, the armament doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. There's no real rhyme or reason to them, and they don't seem to correspond to what is visible in the illustrations. It has 2 heavy mounts. Now, these can be a variety of different weapons, but these are the primary weapons. It has 8 light disruptors, and those are more suppressive in their role. You can say that you're shooting at the enemy and keep them at bay, but those heavy mounts are the Winged Defender's primary weapons. So it starts out using plasma torpedoes. These are an enhanced version of the original plasma torpedo. As you can see by the length of the barrels, they have much longer range. They are much more intended for anti-ship work compared to the previous generations, which were much more anti-fortification. This is for direct combat in ship-to-ship engagements, so it's a lot harder to evade, but they are a little less powerful. You may need 1 or 2 volleys of these to score a kill, but, like I say, much more in line for ship-to-ship combat, and you put that together with the ship's impressive speed and agility, it's pretty hard to avoid getting hit. Now, because they also had the tech exchange with the Klingons where they acquired the Stormbird, the D7 Stormbird, as part of that, they also got photon torpedoes, and they quickly reverse engineered their own proprietary Romulan photon torpedoes. So one of the mounts can also have torpedo launchers. Again, long barrel, based on that Klingon model, which has those long magnetic accelerator barrel, which improves long-range accuracy. So that enables the Winged Defender to engage long-range targets. Again, that's a real novel capability for Romulan ships. And then, after the significant emotional event of Praxis and Khitomer, suffice it to say that a lot of Klingon equipment, including Klingon heavy disruptors, found its way onto the black market, and then found its way onto the hardpoints of Winged Defenders, and thus they acquired heavy disruptors. So, interestingly enough, the Winged Defender actually continually benefited, even after the end of the Romulan-Klingon alliance. It continually benefited from shared Klingon technology, even if that wasn't the Klingons' intention. And indeed, it would come back to bite them, because despite us not seeing much of it, it was quite prolific, and it was upgraded like the Miranda. So it would see service throughout the rest of the 23rd century. It would be their main bird of prey, their main accipiter bird of prey. And it would see use into the 24th century, where it really made a name for itself, conducting raids on the Klingon border. As I say, it came back to bite them, and it was easily superior to the Burrell-class bird of prey, so much so that the Klingons had to invest in countermeasures, both in the Cavort-class bird of prey and the Nork-class heavy bird of prey. So that gives you just a little bit of an indication of just how devastating and frightening and effective the Winged Defender was. It was also no slouch against the Federation either. It's described in many materials as a heavy cruiser, but I think that that is a misnomer. If you look at the actual hull mass of the Winged Defender, it's got barely any more, if not less, than the White Wind. The Winged Defender is not a heavy cruiser, but it is a heavy cruiser killer. The Winged Defender is very, very good and very capable of taking on and defeating enemy heavy cruisers very comfortably. It could easily engage the Katinga or the Constitution. Now, it would probably have trouble against larger ships like the Excelsior, but these were eminently more producible than Excelsiors and required significantly less manpower as well. So it's less of a heavy cruiser and more of an anti-heavy cruiser. But as I say, it is a bird of prey, and it is the full zenith of that concept in the Romulan fleet. There won't really be any birds of prey after the Winged Defender. And that kind of indicates how successful it was. It was successful enough that the Romulans stuck with it for quite a while, seeing service into the Dominion War, and it was clearly bird of prey enough to outmatch the Klingon bird of prey. So again, that's another indication at just how impressive and dangerous this ship really was. It really had a big impact, despite being produced in comparatively limited numbers compared to other birds of prey, both Romulan and Klingon. It had certainly a disproportionate impact and left a very significant impression upon all those who encountered it, not least the Klingons who were on the receiving end of this ship. And so that also brings it into its role really as a symbol of Romulan technology and Romulan technical advancement, and their pioneering spirit, creating the concept of a bird of prey all the way to its ultimate zenith, which is the Winged Defender. And of course, that then being succeeded by other concepts, but that's another video. If you compare the Tallis to the Winged Defender, and that's about 25 years of Starship development. In under 3 decades of Starship development, they go from the Tallis to the Winged Defender, and I think that is a statement enough. Just how Romulan starship design was revolutionized in the 23rd century, and I think that is really what Winged Defender symbolizes. Thank you all for watching. I will see you all next time.